helm create, and give the chart name. Okay, so when you run this command, basically the chart gets created. That means indirectly a folder gets created. Remember, every chart is mapped to a folder. So a folder gets created, and this will be the contents of that folder. I mean, this is how a chart folder should appear. So when by default you create a chart, you may not get everything. You'll get only few things which are compulsory. Anything which is optional may not come there. Okay. So let's go ahead and work with Helm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder for myself. Okay. I'll create a folder, and then we will try to create a chart in that folder. Okay. That's our regular. So what I'll do is I'll say mkdir. Okay. I'll say Helm demo. Let me go to Helm demo. It's an empty folder, you can see there. ls, okay, ls, yeah, there you go. It's an empty folder. There's nothing in it. Any specific reason I'm using Linux here? No specific reason. Okay, but it doesn't matter where are you working, on Linux or Windows, it doesn't matter. The only thing you ensure is you have access to Kubernetes. Okay, so if you are on Windows, maybe you have installed Docker desktop and enabled Kubernetes in it. Okay, if I'm on Linux, the easiest way of getting hold of Kubernetes on Linux is Minikube. Okay, so if you want to know the status, you can say, let's say Minikube, okay, say status. And if I have not started it, obviously it is not running. So I can say Minikube start, and this will start my Minikube Kubernetes cluster. It's going to take some time, but if everything is okay, within a minute your Kubernetes cluster should be up and running. So whatever is shown as stops, right, all that is going to change. There you go. It is trying to set up Kubernetes 1.26.3 cluster, and it is using Docker as its container engine. It doesn't matter, right? I mean, the way Kubernetes has been written, the container engine is something which is replaceable. So okay, it says kubectl is now configured, and the default namespace is default. Okay, that's wonderful. So if I run the same command status, it now shows everything is running, isn't it? So if it is running, I'll just verify. I say kubectl, okay, get all, and there you go. It's a brand new empty cluster. I mean, I've just done cleanup, so you'll not find anything here. Okay, I mean, in the default namespace you don't have. So now that this is there, you can start working with Helm. Okay, so you only need access to Kubernetes cluster. So let's run the command Helm create. Okay, and let's give the name of the chart. For example, my web chart, something like that. It doesn't matter. Okay, let's say my web chart. That's it. So fast, isn't it? So when I run the command now, you see there is a folder created. My web chart. There's a folder created. Let's go to that folder and check up what is the content of that folder. There you go. There are two directories called charts and templates. Then we have chart.yaml file and values.yaml file. Now, in order to better understand this folder structure, shall we open this in VS Code? What do you say? Shall we open this in VS Code to understand? I mean, you'll be able to see something on these lines. Okay, something on these lines. So what I'll do is I'll go back one level up. I'm in my Helm demo. Okay, and I'll open this in my VS Code. There you go. Right, it starts in VS Code. VS Code in Ubuntu. Okay, and there you go. That's my folder. So remember, whenever you create a chart, there is a folder getting created, my web chart. So expand that folder and you will see two directories, charts, templates, okay, chart.yaml and values.yaml. So in case you recollect, values.yaml should be familiar name. Have you seen that somewhere here earlier? There you go here. There you go. Values.yaml, isn't it? So we are basically looking at that file. It is gonna specify the values. Got it? It's gonna specify the values. And then this is basically your chart. Chart means you can treat this as your application. Okay, so this is the API version. That's the Helm API version. Don't touch that. Okay, that will be the name of the application. That will be description of your application. Okay, now there are two types of applications. One is called application. There are two types of charts. I'm sorry. One is called application and other is called library. Okay, so the difference is clearly mentioned here. Okay, so basically application charts are collection of templates that can be packaged into versions and are ready to be deployed. Okay, so templates which can be deployed, and library is basically a set of utilities. That means libraries are used by applications. Okay, libraries are used by applications. Like for example, if you are coming from slightly older days of Windows, or if you are coming from .NET background, you know the difference between something like a DLL and an EXE, right? DLL is called as a library and EXE is your application. Application can run, but DLL cannot run on its own. So if it cannot run on its own, then what is the purpose of a library then? What is the purpose of a library? Is it that it is used by some application? Is it that we say a library is used by some application? Correct? Isn't it? So it basically is set of utilities. That is what is a library. And library will be used by some application. Okay. So what kind of chart are you creating? Yeah, it's an application. And then what is the version? This is the chart version. Okay. So this number should be incremented every time you make changes to the chart. And this is your application version. Okay. So remember, don't get confused. There are three versions mentioned here. At the top is the API version. Okay. That is basically decided by Helm. We should not touch that. Okay. It should be whatever is generated, and that depends on the version of Helm used. Okay. We're not supposed to touch that. Next, you have another version, but this is only version. At the top was API version. Now this is only version. This is called as the chart version. Okay. And whenever you make any changes to the chart, this version should be incremented based on whatever you feel is the relevant. Okay. And if you want to know, or if you want to know the recommendations for giving the versions, you can just go through this website. Okay. They are following the recommendation given here. The semantic versioning of your software. Remember, there is something called major build, minor build, and then we have something called release. So if you have ever been part of software release lifecycle, right, you'll be aware of how to give versions to your software. So there's a website which is dedicated to that. Okay, quite interesting read. So just go through that. Yeah, so this is your chart version and this is your application version. Okay. So when should I change this? Whenever you feel you are enhancing your application. Okay. And it's not that you'll always update both of them at the same time. If you don't feel you have made any changes in the chart, for example, application version, chart version. Okay, let me make it a bit more clear to you. Let's say I am creating an image based on a specific version of Nginx. Okay, let's say version X. I'm creating an image based on specific version of Nginx. Tomorrow I want to change my base Nginx version. That would be change in the application. Okay, so your application version should change. Whereas suppose in your chart there are some changes, like let's say there's a new service that you are introducing. For example, you had cluster IP service. Now you also want to introduce, let's say, ingress. Okay, so you are introducing a new ingress service in your application. So that means what is there in the package, that itself is changing. Then your chart version should change. Okay, got it? That is how basically these two are related. So but they can be independent of each other. Okay, and another thing you observe, Chart version is not in quotes, whereas application version is in quotes, and that is the recommendation. Okay, it is recommended to put this in quotes. This is never in quotes. Okay, this is treated like a number, whereas this is treated like a string. That's why they want us to be in quotes. So that's basically chart.yaml. It has information about your chart, that means of your application. Then in the charts, which is empty right now, okay, and these are the templates, right? So there is lots of ready-made stuff available here, like there is a deployment. There you go, there's a deployment here. There is an ingress here. Okay, these are all placeholders. Got, these are all placeholder. There's a service created here. There you go, there's a service. Okay, look at the type. Okay, and then what does it expose? All that information is here. Selector, right? And then where is the service exposing itself? So all that information is there in these individual YAML files, right? So there's a notes.txt file where information will be inserted. Okay, and then this file will be having lots of useful information. And then in the test, you can see there are some test connections. If you want to test this deployment, okay, you can test it locally before deploying it. So that information is there. And we have Helm ignore in case you want to put this in a repository like a Git compliant repo, what should be added and what should not be added. So just like in Git we have Git ignore, isn't it? Similarly in Helm we have Helm ignore. So any files or folders which match this pattern will not be put into the repository. Basically the changes will not go into the repo. Okay, so that's what basically Helm stuff is. Now is this valid or not? Like for example, let's say let me go to templates. I'll go to deployment. Okay, so what will be the name of the deployment? How will I know? So that information comes from this value. So if I go to values.yaml, are we able to see that information here? Okay, are we able to see that information here? If yes, where are we able to see that information? Let me show you side by side. Okay, I want to open two different files side by side. So this one I'll open. Shall I open deployment? Okay, or if I open service, it will be more clear. And then let me open side by side values.yaml. Okay, now try to locate which value goes into the service. Try to locate this. Try to correlate them. Try to correlate. Are you able to see here values.service.type? Okay, values, that means this is at the root level. Okay, what do you mean by root level? I'm just collapsing it. Okay, for your convenience, I'm collapsing everything. There you go. Everything is collapsed now. So under values, do you have service at the top level? Do you see line number 30? Are you able to see line 30 in values at the right hand side? See service. Okay, under service there is supposed to be type. Now that value will come here. So let me expand service. I have collapsed everything. I'm expanding only service. There you go. Type is cluster IP. That means I'm creating a service of type cluster IP. At which port? See service dot port. So this port will be 80. So this is a template and the value comes from values.yaml. So this will be cluster IP. I mean line 8, this will be cluster IP, and line 10 the port will be 80. Okay, the placeholder. And then we have something called selector. So where is the value for selector coming from? Think about it. Where is the value for selector coming from? So now that we know how basically this was generated, right? I mean the Helm structure was generated. Now that we know how it was generated, and now we saw how to run this command called dry run to verify whether everything is proper or not. So simply go ahead, okay, and then deploy. And once you deploy, we can look at the other commands, how they'll be useful post deployment. Okay. Is it compulsory for us to use Helm if you are using Kubernetes? Not compulsory, right? If you feel that maintaining the Kubernetes application on its own without having some package manager like Helm, if it is becoming a bit complex, then see if using Helm makes your job a bit easier. Definitely it will, because that is what Helm is popular for deploying and managing, okay, a large Kubernetes kind of an application. And once you get used to it, right, I mean, you start writing YAML files and deploy them through Helm. So you create an chart through Helm command and then copy your YAML files into your template folders and start deploying it. Okay, you'll actually enjoy the way Helm allows you to deploy and manage our application. So in the long run, yes, it will be useful. Not if the application is small, or not when you just started learning about Kubernetes. Okay. So after you have sufficient knowledge of Kubernetes, after you understand what is what in Kubernetes, you'll actually appreciate what is Helm. Like for example, if you want to do web application development using MVC, you need to have good understanding of a programming language supported in .NET. For example, C#. There are so many supported, but C# is very popular. Once you understand how to write C# code, once you get good hold on C#, you can go ahead and start developing web applications using ASP.NET MVC and ASP.NET Core or whatever. Okay. Similarly, once you understand what is Kubernetes, how to work with Kubernetes objects, how to create Kubernetes deployments, now you jump to Helm. Okay, you'll appreciate it. Otherwise, you'll find it all a bit confusing. You'll not understand what is this template, what is values, okay, why values should come from, why values should be inserted into template. Okay, if you want to better appreciate it, you come through the path of Kubernetes. So that was introduction to Helm, and what we're gonna do in the next session is start deploying Helm charts and start exploring Helm further. Thank you.